Welcome to Self-Discovery Media Network, formerly known as Self-Discovery Radio. Each week we bring you illuminating shows from those making a difference in the lives of others. They've taken their own journey. They're here to share their skills, their wisdom to help you on yours. You can see more about us at selfdiscoverymedia.com, and please listen to our wonderful collection of shows. Our next show is...
Good day, everybody, and welcome to Recovering the Whole of You. My name is Dr. Kitty Adley, recovery expert and physical therapist. I am the owner and senior physical therapist of Handling Your Health, Wellness, and Rehab, based in Nassau, Bahamas, but we service the entire world. I am so happy to have join us today Dr. Tracy King, clinical psychologist, and I'm just so excited about the show that we're going to have today. It's February, we're talking about the month of love, but we're going to talk about self-love. So let me introduce Dr. King so she can tell us all about herself and share with us the nuggets of self-love and self-care today. Dr. King?
Hi. First, let me say thank you so much for having me on your show. I'm looking forward to this show. But let me tell you a little bit about myself. As you know, my name is Dr. Tracy King. I am a clinical psychologist, and I am currently in the Bahamas, where I am helping a wide spectrum of mental illnesses in the whole life, from child to older adults, in now the outpatient setting.
Okay, great. And how long have you been a psychologist?
Well, I have been a psychologist from 2013, but I have significant training over the years before I got my doctorate degree. So I've been working about a little over 10 years in the mental health field, serving in a wide range, as I mentioned, from child to the older adult population. I've worked in the States, but now I'm currently working in the Bahamas. And so we have really good weather out here. So I'm really happy to be in the Bahamas instead of in the States, where they're experiencing a lot of cold weather.
Yeah, we are fortunate, and we're sending lots of love and sunshine to our counterparts that are in the cooler areas. We're keeping it warm for you down here. So, today we wanted to focus on self-love. It's Valentine's season, we're a few days away from Valentine's. Red and white is everywhere, and people are thinking about how are they going to express their love for the people that they do love, the other people in their lives. And we wanted to focus today and talk about self-love, and I'm so happy to have you here. And I really want you to just open it up for us and tell us how we need to concentrate, or what we should do to concentrate on self-love.
The thing is, we get so bombarded by life stressors. We go to work and we have the demands of work, we have family life, we have friendships that we need to check in with other people, and all these other stuff going on with us. And we're just really trying to keep our head above water, but we forget sometimes that we ourselves should be a priority. And this is a kind of time just to kind of stop and focus, because even with Valentine's, the focus is not really on you, it's on the other person or your loved ones. And so I always it's good just to take a moment and say, look, hey, I'm important too, and I need to be able to self-care, or even self-love, so to speak, and managing your own emotions, managing your own physical, mental, and emotional health.
Okay. As a clinical psychologist, could you give us probably about the top 3 to 5 signs to look out for to show that times when we're not self-loving, or times when we're self-neglecting?
Okay. So when I talk about stress, and when I talk about just feeling overwhelmed, I kind of bring it back to a car, so to speak. Where, if you keep that car running and running and running, it starts to break down. So the body is made up, to be able to handle a certain amount of stress, a certain amount of demand. But over a period of time, if you don't take a moment to exhale or to turn that engine off, then you get to that point of the breakdown. And that breakdown can be seen emotionally, it can be seen physically, and it can also be seen mentally. When we talk about physical, though, there's research out there that talks about when persons are in high stress or burnout stage, that their immune system is less effective. And so they will tend to have a lot more colds, a lot more infections and viruses, etc. But it's also, you feel the physical, the headaches, the aches and pains, those type of things are some signs that your body is saying, hey, you need to take a moment. There is the emotional aspect where you may get depressed, you may feel more irritable, where you're lashing out at people that you normally didn't lash out at. And then there's the mental, where you can't focus or concentrate on things, you're making a lot more mistakes. And so these are just some signs, but the signs will vary from person to person, just like, the whole demands that happen. And so I always say that when you recognize some of these signs, it's a moment that you need to stop, and you need to pay attention to the body, because the body will tell you when it is under too much stress.
Definitely. As a physical therapist, I see that a lot. We always talk about this psychosomatic presentation with a lot of patients. You do a evaluation, and there's nothing in their history, there's nothing in their medical information that speaks to what physical manifestations that they're having. But there are distress thermometers that we use. We use it particularly a lot in cancer survivors, and we can sort of correlate sometimes a lot of symptoms or signs that manifest. But even in the general population, there are a lot of people that have very tight muscles. Sometimes they have pain in joints, they have grinding of the teeth, they have headaches. And we find that it's because they're not managing, like you said, the stress properly. They're burnt out, they're overworked, and we have to address it. Even though we're physical therapists, but we have to take a step back and ask our patients, what are the issues that are presenting that can be causing some of this manifestation. So I'm so happy that you spoke to that. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't even realize or pick it up in themselves until it's probably too far gone. But if somebody is listening to this and they can identify with some of the things that you've just mentioned in terms of signs, what resources do they have, or what steps they should take to explore helping themselves?
So when we really focus on self-love and self-care, it's a personal thing. Some people will say being able to sit down for 15 minutes, that's all quiet, no activity, is a self-care. Some people say, I need to go and take a swim, I need to go jog, I need to do some of these things. So self-care is personal. And I always encourage people just to do some self-reflection and figure out, what do you like to do? What is important to you that will help you maintain your self-care? I talk to people about how I love to read. And I get the response of reading, like that's a positive self-care. Yeah, because people are like, well, I want to watch some TV, I want to have a glass of wine. And it's like, what works for you? And I always, in the same breath, say what works for you, but what works that is healthy. Right. Because sometimes we start and we pick up these coping mechanisms that end up not being so great for us. And one of the things that I've heard a lot is the alcohol, I need to come home and have a beer, I need to come home and have a glass of wine, and all these things. And I'm like, in moderation is okay, but if you're depending on the alcohol to kind of de-stress you, then that's becoming a problem. And there's some research out there that talks about how alcohol doesn't decrease stress. It actually increases the stress. And we know locally that there are people that are going to the web shops that are doing all of the spinning. One of the sources of their stress is financial, and they're going and they're spinning, and it's just an added element because they walk out having less money than when they went in, and so it just adds to that level. So I always talk about, when you are doing that self-assessment of what works for you, to also put into place what works that is healthy and isn't going to add to your stress.
Okay, definitely. I think there is sometimes a taboo for people that may identify they have stress and want to seek help, but the taboo is around, and people are going to think I'm crazy, or I don't want anybody to think that I'm losing my mind. How would you address somebody that has that mindset right now?
Um, we're human, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I put it in that perspective. We're a human race, we're human beings, which means that we will be happy, we will be sad, we will be angry, we will be, all of these spectrum of emotions and feelings. And there's nothing wrong with emotions or feelings, but it's what we do with them. So if I notice that I am angry all the time, or if I notice that I'm depressed a lot, all of these are just signs that something is happening within me that I need to go and get a check. It's just like physical health. If I'm having migraines all the time,
Mm-hmm.
am I not going to see a medical doctor to try to figure out what's wrong? If I break my leg, am I going to just like be at home and say, okay, leg, heal? No, I'm going to go and I'm going to seek the help. And it's the same thing when it comes to our emotional and mental well-being, is there really should not be a stigma, because it is all part of who you are as a person. Your physical health is just as your mental health or your emotional health. It's all a part of you being a human being in essence, and taking care of yourself. So I say, if you are experiencing any type of those emotions, go and get help. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think it's also, as a society, we look at mental health and emotional health in this really bad way, but we need to challenge ourselves in thinking that way. Because I know that if I had a colleague, a family member, even myself feeling depressed for a long time, I wouldn't want them to stay in that place suffering. I would definitely want them to go get help. And it's just the same thing for anyone across the board. I think the problem is that whole C word, that crazy word, that really gets people deterred from going to get the help. But I'm like, C word or crazy is not a diagnosis. It is part of our prejudice against mental health. And instead of saying crazy, can we say emotionally struggling or mentally struggling? Because if you put it in those words, then it doesn't seem as bad.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the day, not everyone that goes to see a mental health professional is going to be diagnosed with a severe illness. When we talk about grief, for example, we all lose something. But are we really factoring in the whole aspect of the person suffering from grief? We're not stigmatizing that person from grief, but that is a part of your emotional and mental well-being. So I think we just need to just challenge ourselves in our mentality or our mindset of looking at emotional and mental health as just a part of us, and not this whole word that we use a lot, crazy.
Right. Right. And we're talking, like I said, the topic sort of came up because Valentine's is coming, and you mentioned grief, and it's so real because a lot of us have lost loved ones, be it a partner, a family member. And we deal with grief differently, and sometimes not very well. And I can think of a few people right now that have lost loved ones, and this may be a particularly difficult time for them. Is there any suggestions that you can offer for somebody that's dealing with grief, especially of a spouse or a partner at this particular time?
I always say to stay on a positive note, because losses is part of our life cycle, and there is no right way to work through your loss. Each individual has their own personal way of dealing with that loss.
Mm-hmm.
But part of dealing with the loss is sometimes forgetting the positive, that this person, the memories that you made with this person, that this person, left a legacy, or this person left whatever with you. I always say that if you focus on the loss itself, that if you focus on the sadness and all of the negative emotions, it just allows you to stay in that negative place. And I'm quite sure that that person wouldn't want you to be in a sad, depressed state. But remembering the memories that you had with this person, remembering, the jokes, the things that you experience with them that just makes you bust out laughing and being like, that was really funny, puts a smile on your face, and it allows you to appreciate the time that you spent with that person. And I know around Valentine's Day, it's not just the loss of, like a life loss, but also we talk about breakups. Because Valentine's really focuses on this romantic kind of aspect. And you have single people questioning, well, what is wrong with me? And why can't I have somebody? Or, this self-doubt. And I read something, I don't know, maybe 2 years, 3 years ago that stuck with me, that looked at relationships in the sense of incompatibility. That at one point you and the person were a lock and key, and you connected, you worked together. And then through various things happen, and that key no longer fit in that hole. So it's no longer compatible. And it's not the fault of the individual that you're with or even yourself. It's just that the things that connected you at the time has changed, and so you're no longer connected. And I think that that was a really good, positive way to look of a breakup, instead of looking at that person as something's wrong with that person or something is wrong with me. And that usually is what the person has, that mindset of, I'm at fault, or I'm faulty. Instead of saying, hey, there is somebody out there that is compatible with me, and that's okay not to be in a relationship right now. I'm going to take the moment to work on myself to get to a better me, so that when that better person, or when that compatible person comes in my life, that I am in a better place to be able to sustain that healthy relationship. That's the way
I think that was fantastic. I really like what you mentioned about focusing on the good memories and all of the loving moments. And I think that massages your own self-love, because it reminds you of, I did have those moments, I did have those memories, and they can probably be, well, not recreated, but I can certainly, there's an opportunity for me to experience something like that again. And then also too, like you mentioned, like if you're not in a relationship, or sometimes some of us are in relationships where from the outside it looks one way, like you're together, but you're struggling on the inside. Those points of connectivity, the compatibility sometimes are not meeting where it is for whatever reason. People have matured, they've changed, there has been a life-changing situation. And that sense of loss, even though you're in a relationship, or loss, not having a partner, is very, very real. And I really like how you brought that to the forum, to focus on what worked, what really worked, what brought us together, or what were the good points, and let's see if we can grow on those things. But it also gives you a chance to probably look at yourself and say, well, what do I need to work on as well? Because, we have to be honest when we look in the mirror and admit that, we're not completely faultless in every situation. And so part of self-love for me is professional and personal growth and development. How can I make myself better than I was, last year? And we need to encourage that, I think, in the health field, because we don't want people to be stuck. Life is about growth. That's one of the characteristics of a living organism. You must continue to grow, whether it's physically, emotionally, mentally. So thank you so much for those points. So Valentine's Day is coming. How do we be nice to ourselves? How do we love ourselves? We're being selfish. No, we're being self-full this Valentine's. What can we do to take care of ourselves and love ourselves more?
Don't be so hard on yourself. I think, we talk about growth. We have these expectations that sometimes are not really based in reality. We think that we're super people. And I just be like, I even do it to myself. Like, oh, you can definitely get, and I look at myself and I was like, nope, take it back. Let's be real. It's not gonna happen. I think we just have to set realistic goals for ourselves and be okay if we're not a super person. Just be human and be you. Be okay in your skin. Yes, there's always room for growth, but appreciate where you are, appreciate who you are, and really just love yourself. And I say that in the same breath of loving yourself, but also challenging yourself to be a better you. Um, that, you know, you wake up in the morning, hey, if you're single, it's fine. If you're not at the place you want to be in your professional life, it's okay. One foot in front of the next. And always, you know, remember that there's always something that you can be grateful for. I think at the end of the day, what we can do for ourselves is just love ourselves. Love ourselves, but challenge ourselves to be the person you would want to see in someone else. Because, you know, when you talk about relationships, it's like, I want this person to be this, and I want them to be that, and I want them to be all of these things. And I remember hearing this song. I can't even remember the artist, but he was like, "Don't be a nickel looking for a dime," you know. And I was just like, just listening to the song, and it just clicked to me what that lyric meant, because we are literally out there looking for these superhuman individuals to have relationships with, but we are not at that point. And even if you find that right person, are you healthy enough to be there? And this is why I always say, with relationships, whether it's a romantic relationships or friendships, you have patterns, and we all bring stuff to the table. And we just have to decide how much stuff we want to let go and be able to move forward. Because at the end of the day, we're not going to be perfect. You're not going to find every 50 items on your list. And, you know, we just have to be realistic about it. But also recognize that you might find your 50 item person, but you still are a 5-item person.
Right.
And how is that going to work? So it's out there looking for the person that's compatible, but always challenging yourself to meet that expectation that you would want that other person to have. I know it's rough. The struggle is
rough.
real.
It's rough. It requires you to be honest with yourself. It requires, and sometimes we're not prepared to be totally honest with ourselves. It's always easier to blame it on something else or somebody else.
Yeah.
But being honest, I think, is a big part of self-love, because you love yourself with the flaws or the inadequacies you have at that moment. And that self-acceptance is very, very important to move on to the next step. And, you know, there are times when we look for what we're lacking in somebody else. And that's where the issue comes in, because you need to have some point of agreement. That person can't be constantly giving. That person needs to be filled as well. And it's not just a romantic relationship as well. It's like a mentor-mentee, because mentors learn from their mentees as well, right? And I'm just so loving this conversation. This is just so awesome today. So
I want to tag I just want to tag into what you were saying, because, you know, through the years, I've come to these terms of takers and givers.
Right.
And I've come across a lot of givers. And the thing about givers, they just give and give and give. But at the end of the day, there's nobody ever there to give to them. And so I just want to take this moment just to say, like, relationships are give and take. But if you are constantly giving and not setting boundaries down, people are going to take advantage of your giving nature. And you're going to look around and be like, okay, well, where? No, because you only attracted the takers. And so it's also, when you talk about self-awareness, you got to be aware of how many times are you a giver or are you a taker?
All right.
You know, and if you are a constant giver, then your circle is going to be a lot of takers. Unfortunately, that's usually the case. And I always say to people, like, if you are a giver, there's nothing wrong with giving, but you have to recognize that there's some healthy boundaries that you need to put in place so that you are not abused by those persons that are takers. So I'm glad you put that in there, because I just like, I slid right in there, and at one point that was good. I think that would be very good for people around this time to recognize the giver and takers and the necessary need for healthy boundaries.
I think we don't mention boundaries enough. And especially for those of us that work in healthcare, we by nature, by our occupation, we're always giving, and we take that almost into every spectrum of our life. And we don't establish good boundaries. We don't. And we need to be, like you said, more aware of it and say, hey, no, this is my cutoff point. Yes, I love you. I really love what I do, but don't call me on Sunday at 3:00 in the afternoon when I'm trying to have dinner with my kids.
3 a.m. in the morning.
Definitely.
How did you know?
Right. So, setting boundaries. How far would you allow somebody to take, well, I shouldn't say, to get into your space, number one, and to take from you as well. Because if you don't set boundaries for yourself, nobody's going to respect your boundaries. They're going to keep coming for you. And then you're going to be mad at them, and you're not taking good care of yourself. And, I hope by now people can understand why I really wanted to have you on this show, because you're such a wealth of information and a resource. You're so easy to talk to. And I'm just so grateful that I have you in my network, that when I come across patients and friends and family members that may need intervention or just someone to talk to, that you're there. So Dr. Tracy King, how can we find you? How can somebody access you?
So the easy way to access me would probably be through email. It is drtracyking242@gmail.com. So if you have questions, or if you just need to reach out to me, email is probably the best.
Okay, great. And what message would you like to leave? I know we talked about a whole load of things, but if you had to leave a message for Valentine's, for self-love, what would that message be?
It's okay not to be okay, but if you are not okay, get okay. I guess.
I love that.
It's okay not to be okay, but it's not okay to stay that way.
Okay.
So take care of yourself. If you're recognizing that life is just too much for you, take a moment and just be able to find what works for you self-care wise. I've known some people who say, look, I just want to take, at the end of the day, a nice quiet bath, or I just want to watch my favorite show without any interruptions. So I would say just take care of yourself and do a lot more self-care instead of self-hate.
Great. Thank you so much for the time that you've given us today. I can't thank you enough, and I hope that we can get together and share more and help more people in this forum. We will have all of your contacts listed below, so if you didn't get the email when she gave it, it'll definitely be in the comments below. And as we go into Valentine's seasons and celebrations, remember, you can't pour from an empty cup, and you have to love yourself first before you can love anybody. So thank you once again, Dr. Tracy King, for being here with us, and I look forward to talking with you later on with Recovering the Whole of You. I'm signing off, Dr. Kitty Adley. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.
We hope that you enjoyed the show. To hear more of these wonderful shows on selfdiscoverymedia.com, just look up our podcast genre list. You will see many shows archives there ready for listening. Don't forget to share these wonderful shows. And if you wish to be a guest or a host, or you have an organization that needs to be highlighted, contact us at info@selfdiscoverymedia.com. Bye for now.